Welcome to the Unapologetic Heroine podcast, where myth is made manifest. As the author of The Way of Inanna, a heroine's guide to living unapologetically, this podcast is based on Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of love and war who embodies multidimensionality and lives unapologetically true to her heart. We showcase the wisdom of individuals courageous enough to do the same. These are inspiring stories of what it takes to be authentically who you are. My guests honor the wisdom of love, embrace the polarities of being human, and walk their truth. I am your host, Shauna Zalazo, licensed psychotherapist, intuitive channel, and author of the book, The Way of Inanna. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to our final episode. In concluding the Unapologetic Heroine podcast series, I wanted to turn it over to the youth of today to highlight the ways in which our younger generation is already in alignment with the archetype of Inanna. I also wanted to end this series with a focus on the future healers of our world. As a teacher of ascension, Inanna reminds us that to rise, we must come into wholeness. And this means we must heal our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical bodies so we can align with the highest vibration of love. Part of this includes broadening or reconceptualizing the practice of medicine, allowing it to become more holistic and integrative, and to promote unity consciousness by encouraging self-advocacy and social justice. I wanted to hear from someone who is about to begin the journey of medical training. Furthermore, I wanted to conclude the series in the way I imagine Inanna would, dissolving barriers and limitations by showcasing someone who represents a balanced expression of humanity, reflecting the integration of the yin and yang within each of us. I hope today's conversation will make it clear that the younger generation is prepared to heal the planet and promote the vibrational and evolutionary shift currently underway. My guest is Sam Oomen-Lochtefeld, who at only 23 already embodies the congruence many of us have been seeking for years, and which is essential for our ascension process. Sam will begin medical school at Tufts University this July. Growing up in a family of artists, Sam, who is a multimedia visual artist, was always taught to prioritize creativity. I want to highlight Sam's creative vision with its emphasis on a new way of living in alignment, inclusivity, and love. Sam, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Shauna, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to meet you on our journey together. Thank you so much again for having me.
I'm so excited to speak with you today. You start med school in just 6 months, and I'm really so excited that we get to talk before you actually begin the program. Throughout the podcast, we've been extremely fortunate to connect with amazing individuals and trailblazers who are living their truth and in their already established careers, like Dr. Nathan Riley, who is also doing medicine differently. I want to leave the last word with the next generation of change makers and light workers, and to demonstrate how they are unifying spirit and science, addressing social change and equality, and openly aligning with the wisdom of the earth to heal, just as our sacred ancestors did. Sam, you exemplify all that makes me hopeful and restores my faith. Can you share a little bit about the type of doctor you envision becoming and what your intention is for your career?
Of course. Well, I will say that this is a bit of a difficult question to answer, because although there are great examples, like Dr. Nathan Riley, who you spoke to before, of how you can exist as a healer and really lead from the heart, there isn't yet space within our contemporary medical system for people that want to practice like this, as you highlighted in your conversation with him previously. And I definitely think that my continuous process of searching for myself and understanding who I want to become and where in the world and through myself, and I can bring the most good in the ways that this world needs right now, is where, in that process, is where I most understand myself. So, just understanding myself most clearly through the process of becoming, and at the center of that process is knowing that above all else, I have to listen to and be guided by my heart. And there are definitely there's some directions I have in my head already where I can take this. I know that family medicine and community-based medicine are really important to me. And I know that holistic modalities of healing that recognize all the layers of what it means to be human is so important to healing everyone in the world right now. So much of what we consider our health to be exists outside of the healthcare office, including like the food we eat, your housing situation, your community and how you feel supported and taken care of by them, and how you understand and feel about your own identity. And I think the importance of being present for your community as a practitioner, for your patients, is so essential. And I know in one of your chapters of Inanna, you discuss the importance of sacred boundaries and recognizing and maintaining the integrity of the role you're in while you're there. And in this sense, I think it's so important to put your heart into your work and be led by your heart in your work. So like, I mean, if you're there to take care of people, if you're there to be a doctor, like you better really care for those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so excited to hear, because as I see in your experience, you're really highlighting this dissolution of a power differential as well by being present. It feels like the way in which you're describing this, it's like you're coming up alongside your patients and and the desire is to be that whole process you're describing of becoming as well is so important as well. This notion that you're in touch with right now is so much about that potentiality that exists within us to heal in general. And something I feel is so very valuable to have, that energy, that connection to the essence of becoming as a doctor, to be in touch with that in that way is something that I imagine really mirrors for patients to be able to sort of step into themselves, be open to that generative potential to be whole, and that you are showing up that way.
It's vulnerable, but it's just committing to the journey together and knowing that like you and your patient are in this together. You are not a machine. You are there to take care of each other. It's you really got to recognize the humanity of it.
I love that so much. As is well documented now, and the COVID-19 pandemic really brought it to the forefront, there are massive and egregious inequities in healthcare. We knew it before, but the pandemic broadened the awareness of just how huge the disparity in social determinants of health among different segments of the population, particularly for people of color and other minority groups. Regarding social determinants of health, what are some of the biases that you see even at the outset of your own study and practice?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things the COVID-19 pandemic really highlighted for us is how, I mentioned this before, but how much of medicine and health and healing occurs in the community outside of a doctor's office. So having resources available, like good food, good housing, a community that takes care of you when you fall down, and just generally feeling in life, low levels of stress and appreciation and understanding of self are so important to keeping people happy and healthy, not only on a daily basis, but especially in times of crisis. So it's no surprise that when we enter this pandemic, that the people who already didn't have safe and secure housing and food options and had comorbidities or were working in service industry jobs are more likely to suffer directly from the COVID-19 pandemic. So as you may know, I've done some work with the Center of Complementary and Integrative Medicine at Tufts Medical Center. And a lot of the populations we work with are patients with chronic musculoskeletal pain who are already so vulnerable. And recently we've looked at how the pandemic impacted them, and those that are most impacted and were hit the hardest, not just like in terms of physical deterioration and increases in pain, but also feeling so emotionally vulnerable, feeling so alone, really deterioration in mental health as well, were the ones who didn't have those social support systems in place, didn't have people to fall back on, and really like completely lost touch with their healthcare providers. Like not even a phone call, like didn't know who to call, didn't know how to get an appointment, didn't have access to things like telehealth. So, I mean, community health experts have been saying this for years, but to create healthy individuals, you need to create healthy communities that are able to take care of not only themselves, but the people around them. And in an ideal world, there's a lot of things that need to happen before we can do this, like affordable housing, food, as I mentioned, but also like the bottom of this is health equity, wealth and health equity. I meant to say wealth equity, but health equity too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I see so much of your perspective in alignment with the field of social work, which is my background and my training. And I just love that so much because for all the reasons I pursued it as a career, because it just really does focus on what you're describing. I would say health and wealth equity, but also social justice in general. And I really appreciate that perspective and that the sense of advocacy that's present in your perspective of medicine, which I love.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, care has to be multidimensional, and we have to look at all of the layers of what it means to be human. And it can't just be the physical symptoms. It has to be housing situations. It has to be if you feel safe at home. It has to be your support system. And that's something social work is so essential for, is really like filling in a lot of the gaps present in the medical system.
Absolutely. Sam, I see the rituals and the ceremonies in the folklore of Inanna, as many scholars do, to be celebratory of the queer community. In your opinion, what's missing from the current medical paradigm in the way of the unique care needs of the LGBTQIA plus community?
Yeah, I mean, Inanna it was such a beautiful read, because really, I mean, you can extend this to the queer community, but really for all people, what is so important is being celebrated in your own identity and how you want to choose to express yourself and live your life. In terms of specifically LGBTQ people, I want a medical system that not only will validate their identity and that they deserve respect, but one of the things I hold close to my heart as a healer and a care provider is that every act of defiance of the world and who you are expected to be in favor of becoming your true and authentic self and expressing your way of what it means to be a living person in the world is so absolutely sacred. And like, this is such a paradox, because living as a queer, gender fluid person, on one side, your existence is considered a political debate, and your existence is like, it's up for debate. Are you a real person? Well, on the other side, I think queer people are so incredibly brave and curious about who we are and what it means to be alive and all the things that you can become. And I really just feel like I am exploring my way through the world, which is, it's hard, but it's beautiful too. And like, I have this kind of concept in my mind of the divine point of creation is how I understand it, but it's like this idea of life discovering itself and like actualizing itself by exploring itself and interacting with itself. And I really feel like queer people are right at that divine point where we're trailblazing and like choosing to live rather than choosing to be defined. So I think individually, my goal as a medical professional would be to make LGBTQ people really feel seen and celebrated. And obviously, this validation of freedom of expression extends beyond those who identify as LGBTQ. And I think it's so special for anyone in the world trying to find themselves and come into themselves and come home to themselves in the world.
This is exactly why I wanted to have you on, because I just so appreciate the capacity to articulate your heart. And I really appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you. You are multilingual. Not only do you own the multiple aspects of self by embracing, nourishing, and celebrating your salient identities, but you speak their many voices in Dutch, Spanish, and English. Many of us struggle with understanding the language of our own heart, and it appears that this is another language you are fluent in. How did you learn to hear your heart so clearly?
Well, I think fluent is a bit of an overstatement, because it's so hard to really grasp that thread, and hold on to it and carry that with you all of the time. And there are definitely times when it comes in and out and I'm like, oh, there it is. Like, I need this all the time, but it's like, then it's gone again and I'm grumpy and it's cloudy out. So I'm not having a good time in the winter and I'm like, where's my thread? But I think the first step of figuring out how to listen to your heart is actively choosing to listen. And I really think it's as simple as that. And this might be easier to do for those who are queer or part of the LGBTQ community, because you're forced to be curious about the world, because nothing is really as it seems. You don't traditionally fit into any of the boxes that you're given. And you're just like, there's no blueprint for how to be a person for you. So you really just have to do your own research, explore on your own, and figure out what is right. And it's not like, as I mentioned, I'm not fluent. This is just me relating listening to my heart to being queer, but I'm learning all the time. Every day I'm figuring out new things. I literally, like, in the last month, I've been like figuring out that I probably am non-binary, although I have been questioning that for years. Yeah, and again, obviously, you don't have to identify as a queer person to understand that there's more to the condition of being human than not only living in a binary, but also living within a capitalist system or a patriarchy that loves to put things in boxes for them to be commodified, for them to be used for productivity, and instead that life is truly so fluid, and we're here to make magic together.
I appreciate that so much, Sam. And the fluidity, that energy is really captured in Inanna in the way that she's really comfortable in the liminal. And I just love the energy of resisting being bound and put in a box. I firmly believe that the way to personal and planetary healing is through the heart. As Inanna's mythology also conveys, her message is and always has been to love unapologetically. It is a truth that I live by. Do you have a particular spiritual truth or attribute by which you live, Sam?
It's hard to pin down just one, because, like, why live by one truth when you can live by all the truths? Everything is like has a truth to it. But I grew up in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, which is it's such a beautiful community to be a part of. There's no set religious doctrine, but they draw from Christian, Jewish, and Buddhist teachings. And it's so accepting to queer people, and everyone is just living their own truth. And you're really encouraged to explore your own faith and your spirituality, as long as you respect those of everyone else, of course. And one of the main teachings is the interconnectedness of everything, how not just between people, how my fate is not directly tied to, for example, a patient or anyone I meet on the street, but also the world, our planet, the earth we have to take care of. And alongside with that is really standing on the side of love. That was one of the main hymns we would sing. We are standing on the side of love. I can't believe I just started singing that. But
thank you.
So a lot of these teachings have made their way into my own doctrine, but also in my own silly, funny way. One that I found last year when I was graduating college, and I had spent so many years learning things, and I was like, what do I actually even know? Like, do I remember anything from biochem? No. Do I remember anything from immunology? Like, T cells exist, but that's it. Okay, so what do I actually have? And what came to me is I'm a one-trick pony, and my one trick is I love you.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have much, but I can hold on to that. And if I can hold on to that, like, I'm sure the world will carry me towards a place I can care for people and spread that. And yeah, that's all I need for the world, because that's what I want and that's what I care about, Yeah, besides that, I think everything with patience and grace is a good one too.
I really, really appreciate that one. The patience is something that is, I think, both Inanna and myself struggle with a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be gentle with everything, with the world, with yourself, with people. Everyone's going through their own thing, and everything's just complicated, and you have to let it be complicated and figure it out as you go.
1,000%. I see your generation encouraging us to make some changes in our approach to education, inviting us to rethink how we teach our youth to incorporate the range of neurodiversity that is humanity. You graduated from Tufts in 2022 with majors in biology and pre-med and minors in both studio art and anthropology. You also ran track at Tufts for 4 years, specializing in the 400 and 600 meters, all while maintaining an art practice. Clearly, Sam, you own your multidimensionality as the artist, athlete, scientist. Was there a particular teacher or learning experience that helped you to understand the depth of who you are and that you didn't have to choose a singular identity?
Yeah, I definitely get comments about this a lot. They're like, what? You wanted to do art and you wanted to do biology. What are you going to do? Like draw plants or something? Which, yeah, like maybe I will. But really, they're just all different parts of myself. And speaking to someone who really inspired me to pursue all of those things is, well, is my mom. And she definitely was the first. I'll call her a magician. Some people say, like, I like to call her a witch sometimes too, but she's a magician. And that is to say, someone who taught me that, yes, the world is actually all that and more. You know, the world is an infinite metaphor for itself, and we are all what she likes to call rainbow beings. So not just one thing or all the things. And when we grow, we just don't grow in one direction. We can grow in all directions. And her journey also, as someone who really found her own way in the world, migrating to the US in a tiny sailboat and exploring healing and art and building a community here, her bravery is so inspirational to me. And she's always been the one that said, yes, like, you're interested in art, you're interested in medicine. Why would you ever just want to choose one? And these things you mentioned are all things that really bring me joy and are just fun and allow me to experience what it means to create and be playful and explore the world. And they are so generous in that they really allowed me to understand myself too and see myself in them. So it's really reciprocal. You explore, you look in all directions, and things from all directions will come to you.
And I knowing your mother, I couldn't agree more. You grew up in a family of artists. Your mother, Sanchez Oomen, is also an artist. Your grandfather, Lochtefeld, is a visual artist. And as an artist yourself, you work in multiple media, including photography, video, printmaking, drawing, and painting. And today you're focusing on portraits and painting with acrylics. The facility with which you move between different media is astonishing to me. How can you so easily switch registers?
Well, I do want to mention that alongside my grandfather and my mother, my father was also an artist for a very long time. And although he definitely has decided that he's moved on from that, and he doesn't identify as one, he's worked in ceramics for a very long time and has made some really beautiful work. I don't know. Maybe I'll send you pictures after this, but
please do.
I definitely grew up being surrounded by people that were so curious and immersed in the dreams they create. And I think for me, although I really can't imagine trying to pursue a career out of it, because making art for me is really just playful. And then when I allow myself to be playful is when I enjoy it the most and can actually produce work. One of my main blocks is when I'm like, oh, I need a message. I spent 1 year in art school before I decided to make it a minor. And one of the main things was oh, I've loved making art, but now they're asking me what my thesis is for every piece that I make. And I'm just I don't know. I like putting these colors on this piece of paper and I think they look really cool. And sometimes I imagine that's what I feel like is just this amorphous blob of color or something like that, So, and I can't come close to claiming that I'm a master in any of these media. But I think because I just will be playful and try different things. But I think that my desire to create and make some funny little things carries me pretty far. So yeah, it's all just a playful exploration for me.
That's so connected to me when my understanding of the second chakra, which is our creative center, is really the place where we give ourselves permission to play, to have joy, to have fun. So it makes sense to me completely.
And that too, just aligned with feeling confident and myself in my gender and my sexuality. It's so freeing. It just gives me so much space to be creative. Not just in how how other people see me, but also how aligning myself with my gender expression or my sexuality gives me such a better understanding of self that I get so much more permission from myself to just behave in any way I want. And I don't know, make beautiful things and speak how I want to speak, and be open to the world.
That unapologetic archetype right there. I love that. While we have been addressing the concept of medicine for humanity, I'm interested in hearing about what you see as medicine planet Earth needs most right now.
There are definitely so many things that the world needs right now. Like the world is suffering, including like a restoration of biodiversity. We need to feed a lot of people. We need a lot of reparations in terms of like what the West has done to just throw the rest of the world into poverty. But I think one place to start is the collective understanding that life and the world we live in are sacred and far too complex for us to ever be able to objectify and define and reduce in order to fit into our patriarchal and capitalist conceptualization. And at the center of everything we do, we need to hold the firm belief that we're all miracles, and that needs to guide everything we do. The sanctity of life cannot be sacrificed for the sake of convenience or monetary incentives. A collective desire or the choice as a community, and I mean a community as like a collective understanding in Massachusetts or in the United States or in the capitalist world in general, to conquer and deconstruct and break down the world into little pieces that are consumable, can only come from a place of fear. And to truly heal, we have to move towards a place where we can not only feel at peace with the sacred unknown, but we also feel held by it. We feel a part of it. And maybe like this is just an artist's optimism, but I truly believe that we can make something beautiful together if we try.
I fully agree with that. That is my prayer and my hope. Regularly, I pray that we come together in alignment in this way. As we were talking about your mother, Sanchez Oomen, she is also a universal shamanic healer who combines multiple modalities to heal the whole person, which is something you're addressing here with regard to planet Earth. You grew up in a house where the dominant healing tools were drums and tuning forks, and yet you're entering a world where your tools might include stethoscopes and blood pressure cuffs. How are these two approaches to healing interwoven for you?
Yeah, well, I think the scientific method has definitely gotten us pretty far, or at least made a lot of changes to the world. But I think there are so many things that we don't know and don't understand about the human condition and how we fit into a larger world. And nowadays, there are so many common modalities that are accepted within conventional Western medicine that would have been considered absurd about like 10 to 20 years ago. But also, these have been practiced for centuries by expert healers around the world. And there are so many conditions that we don't understand or remotely come close to knowing how to treat, including depression and anxiety, addiction, forms of chronic pain that really require a holistic approach that Western medicine and this really masculine and reductive form of medicine are incapable of treating. And again, back to my work with the Tufts Center for Complementary and Integrative Medicine, where I work, one of the most substantial accomplishments of the doctor I work under is the integration of Tai Chi as standard care for patients with chronic pain, including knee and hip osteoarthritis. And in these modalities, they are so effective because they combine physical, spiritual, and the mental aspects of healing to help patients feel at home in their bodies again. And I really think the idea that we can dismiss healing modalities simply because we don't understand them, even though they have been used for thousands of years and are known to be effective in very old communities, is simply, it feels petty and it feels so on brand for a self-conscious patriarchy. If you can't control it and you don't understand it, that doesn't mean you can just like dismiss it,
Absolutely. I have one final question, Sam. Who do you look to? Which cultural figure, artist, or musician do you see as emblematic of the voice of your generation?
Yeah, so I think that someone that definitely needs a shout out and who has inspired me a lot and truly helped me find my voice is the non-binary artist, poet, and comedian Oomen-Lochtefeld. A lot of these concepts that I've talked about today and that I've come to understand about the importance and beauty of being your authentic self in the world come from Alok, and what it means to live in a world that actively suppresses people from creatively expressing themselves. And their work is based in gender theory and definitely draws tenets from anti-capitalist movements, but they do it in a way that is so truly beautiful because they're really a true artist. And they lead with love in everything they do. And if you haven't heard of them, I highly recommend anyone that's listening. Also, the name is Oomen-Lochtefeld. I think they were Stanford educated and are just like, they're doing a world tour right now, I believe, but really just amazing speaker. And besides that, I feel like I really should shout out my family and all of the human beings that have led me, my partner, my friends, who are so exceptional themselves and have made me feel so loved and supported in my own journey. So thank you so much to them and people like you who guide me along the way. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just really, really value what you said, because you lead with love as well. So just so beautiful. There's that mirror again. Seeing oneself in art.
I can never do it alone. I could never do it alone.
Thank you so much, Sam, for joining me and for helping me end this podcast series on a note that is hopeful with respect to where we are headed.
And one more thing for me. Thank you so much, Shauna. I had such a wonderful time coming here today and being able to speak my truth. And I mean, this is just one of the processes along the way to helping me figure that out. And your work is so impactful and beautiful and creative and explorational. And I really love to see it flourishing in the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you. Thank you. And to our listeners, I hope that you have enjoyed this series as much as I have. I have learned so much about the ways the archetype of the unapologetic heroine is showing up in our world today and how powerful this reclamation is. I also learned so much about myself. This platform was an entirely new one for me, and I will admit, pulled me far outside of my comfort zone into a creative outlet that I didn't realize I would love so much. I had to dissolve my apprehensions to show up for my guests and my listeners, and in doing so, I dissolved some of my own inner limitations. Thank you so much for being with me on this ride. I encourage you to go back and listen again. Let Inanna help you access the message that is most relevant for you today. Use your intuition. Rearrange the sequence, allow the episodes you need to tune into to select you. And as always, may you all experience fulfillment on every level with great ease and joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Unapologetic Heroine podcast, featuring remarkable individuals living their truth. For more wisdom on how to support your own journey toward honoring your heart and courageously alchemizing our world through the power of love, pick up my book, The Way of Inanna, A Heroine's Guide to Living Unapologetically, at booksellers worldwide.